Never mind. We're just gonna keep going. Ignore the lack of small clap, everyone. All right. Welcome to Coby's Brain, episode 1. To refresh, Coby's Brain was previously a blog, but now it's a vlog. Basically, Coby's Brain touches on all of the most exciting topics you could ever imagine that currently occupy Coby's brain, ranging from movies to television shows to books to music to thoughts. And so you can guarantee that if you are watching Coby's Brain, you will be receiving the opinions of Coby regarding these specific topics. So, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to get started. So, to begin, the first thing we're going to talk about is going to be in the entertainment category. And it is a movie from 2014 known as It Follows. So It Follows is a horror movie. So if you're not into horror movies, don't watch it. You're just gonna it's a scary one, and I don't often find movies scary, but this one was pretty terrifying. It was basically about, so the premise is there's a young girl who has a sexual encounter, and because of the sexual encounter, a curse is passed on to her that she can only get rid of if she passes it on to someone else. So, and the curse is terrifying, quite frankly. It's just this person thing that just follows at a very slow pace. And so if you're looking for a terrifying movie, I would definitely recommend It Follows. I'm a big fan of horror movies that have some social commentary or relation to something that's happening in the real world, in which case it's kind of like a cursed sexually transmitted disease. And there's honestly a lot going on in the movie, so if you like horror films, I would definitely recommend it. Coby's Brain gives this film an 8.3. That's a good rating, for those of you who don't know. So next, we are going to talk about Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, which is a 2018 Amazon film that's been distributed by Amazon. It's pretty cool. I guess it's was recommended to me by my therapist because addiction has been it's basically about a writer or a just guy played by Joaquin Phoenix, who named John Callahan. It's based off of his memoir, and basically he was just not a great guy, super alcoholic, and because of a drunk driving accident with his friend Jack Black, he becomes wheelchair bound, and based on that experience, he just decides to get sober. So with the help of Jonah Hill, he manages to complete the 12 steps and really grows. So if you want a movie that's gonna teach you about the 12 steps, if you're like considering sobriety, it's definitely an educational movie to watch. However, is it a little bit, melodramatic at times, and is it a little is it a little bit hard to take Jonah Hill seriously as a sponsor? Like, yeah, a little bit. So, we gave that movie a 6.8, which, 7.5 is a movie that I'm like, all right, you got to watch this movie. You don't need to watch don't worry, won't get far on foot. But if you do, you'll like it you'll like it however much you're gonna like it. I don't know how much that's gonna be, but I liked it a 6.8. So way to go, Gus Van Sant. All right, so another topic that I've been talking a lot about in previous blogs has been Punk'd, which is a reboot of the old MTV show that everyone used to love, super famous. You had Ashton Kutcher as a host. But, Quibi is kind of rebooting a variety of shows now. Among those shows, Reno 911 and Punk'd is another one. With now it has Chance the Rapper, which is pretty interesting. It was definitely pretty funny. I think the guests were awesome. I'm a big fan of rap. They had Offset, Ty Dolla $ign, French Montana, Megan Thee Stallion, and some of the pranks were hilarious. So some of them were a little bit like whatever, but you can't count on them to nail it every time. I would say I was a little frustrated by how unoriginal some of the pranks were. Like, I think 4 or 5 of them out of 10 involved destroying a car, which was really funny the first time, but I'm kind of like, all right, we get it. But in terms of looking towards Quibi as a future source of content, or kind of a new type of a new way that we're going to be consuming short form, high quality content, I think this show is definitely the best example that I've seen. So way to go, Chance the Rapper. I'm pretty impressed. 7.4. You don't have to watch it. Like, you'll be fine if you don't watch it, but if you do get that free trial of Quibi, I still honestly wouldn't recommend I don't think I'm going to be paying for it once my 90-day trial subscription ends, but check out this show if you get that. It's the best thing I've found on there, to be quite frank. Aquadogs was pretty funny, but it was whatever. All right. So we're now going to talk about one of the best new shows that I've seen on television, which is Dave, which is on FX. So if you don't know who Lil Dicky is, then, I definitely recommend looking him up. He's a white rapper who basically makes comedy raps, but in this show is predicated on the notion that he is actually taking his rapping very seriously. So I don't really know if that's true. I think his raps are very clearly comical, but he wants to be a serious rapper in this show, but just because of him and how funny he is, the show is hilarious. He has a really observational kind of humor that I find really amusing. And the show actually touches on a lot of pretty interesting issues, like, what it's like to be like a white rapper. Like, does that make you a culture vulture? If you're kind of appropriating a non-white art form. And also examines the dynamic between success and interpersonal relationships. And also, one aspect I found super interesting was there was an episode about what he called the bird bomb when he was a kid, which was basically when he would like just do something stupid. His friends would be like, at Jewish summer camp, they'd be like, bird bomb, and he would go and just make a fool of himself. And I was like, okay, wow, that was my childhood for sure. And it's just interesting because he is someone who really wants to entertain people. And, I think I'm also similar in that way. And that kind of is a dangerous place to be, if you're around people who, kind of don't necessarily want the best for you. And so him as a, comedian navigating the fact that he is a comedian that people laugh, like a very self-deprecating kind of comedian, him navigating how to, be authentic to himself and funny in a healthy and sustainable way is a pretty interesting thing. So way to go, Dave. We're proud of you. We're giving your show an 8.6. That's a great rating. Based on that rating, if you haven't seen that show, get on it. You don't have to, but Coby recommends it. All right. Next up, Solar Opposites. So based on that image, it's pretty clear that the show has a lot of similarities to Rick and Morty, which is, I think, currently the Coby's Entertainment Blog's #1 TV show. So I obviously have a strong affinity for that show. And that's because this show is created by Justin Roiland, so it obviously has a super similar animation style. Also Mike McMahon. And it almost looks like this show could take place within the Rick and Morty universe. I'm sure there's going to be crossover at some point in the future. But basically, the show is about these aliens who come to planet Earth and live in kind of like middle America, and they're pretty disillusioned. The main alien, who's played by Justin Roiland, is pretty disillusioned with it, where his name's Corvo. Whereas the other alien, whose name is Terry, played by Thomas Middleditch, funny guy, loves the humans. So it's a pretty funny concept and executed pretty well. I love the animation style of Rick and Morty, and I think this show just does a really great job of pretty much identically replicating it. It is a lot more violent than Rick and Morty, I've noticed, which is pretty crazy. And it's not quite as amusing, and that could just be because I haven't fully invested myself in the characters in the same way. But, I definitely like the show. If you are like me and really are wanting more Rick and Morty type content, this show is a must-see. Also, the fact that it's aliens kind of explores topics of, race, which is kind of interesting, and, racism in America. And then also, there's an interesting side story about, the young alien, forget what his name is, shrinks humans and puts them in his wall. So there's this just, giant subplot about small people living inside of this small alien's wall. It's pretty interesting. So very Rick and Morty-esque. If you're into that show, I would recommend giving it an 8.3. Obviously, it's not as high as Rick and Morty, but for what it is, which is just a Hulu show, it's pretty great. Definitely check it out if you have Hulu. All right. So my girlfriend and producer, Amanda, has been getting me into the television genre known as reality TV. So previously, I didn't think I would be super fond of reality television, but I gotta say, I gotta hand it to them. There is some very high quality and entertainment value that can be derived from reality television. Just the fact that I still haven't wrapped my head around it, but I've been watching Real Housewives of New York, of Beverly Hills, Vanderpump Rules, and the only one that I've really I got really into and sunk my teeth into and decided to watch in its entirety was the first season of Netflix's Too Hot to Handle. So this show, very interesting premise that I think differs from other reality TV shows in a lot of ways. The idea is you bring all of these sexually charged, very attractive men and women onto an island, and you tell them that they're there for, some kind of exciting retreat, and then break the news to them that they can't actually act on their sexual urges. And with the intention of allowing them to grow and foster more authentic relationships. So the show, it's kind of an interesting social experiment in a lot of ways, and I think it brings out some interesting questions about contemporary relationships and dating and true authenticity of and vulnerability and like these kinds of things. But I think the main reason I liked the show was just kind of because the people were funny. There were some really funny and amusing characters, and I think that's why people like all reality TV show for the most part. Getting intimately acquainted with real people, and doing that was very amusing. Gave the show a 7.9. So, way to go. Too Hot to Handle. You were amusing, for sure. All right. So, we're now exiting. Just got a comment from my mom that my father likes that show. So, shout out, Dad, for Too Hot to Handle. I'm glad you like it. Finished it. Let me know what you think in the chats. And now that I know that my mom's finally here, it's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day. You are a 10 out of 10. Way to go. Love you, Mom. And shout out to all the other moms out there. You are also 10 out of 10s. All right, so now we're going to talk about Drake's latest album. So this is now transitioning into the music blog section of Coby's brain. So, Drake's new album was exciting for me because, I'm a big fan of Drake. Who doesn't like Drake? Anyone who says they don't like Drake is lying to themselves. Or just like trying really hard to not like him. This album, though, it wasn't. I think it's safe to say it was not his best. I liked a couple songs on it. For example, Who Can Hate on the Tootsie Slide, banger. Certainly on the Coby Q. Certainly gets me to bop. Also, there's a song on it called D4L with Young Thug and Future. Fire. Other than that, I wasn't blown away, Drake. So if you're listening to this right now, I guess just like a little more effort next time, because I know you got it in you, man. Like, you're one of the most talented musicians in the world. So next time, I don't know, a little bit more effort out of you. I'm just kidding, Drake. It was fine. It was fine. But it only got a 7.1, You as an artist, great. But, like, this album, it could have been a little bit better. So, if you have not yet listened to Drake's new album, no need to do it. Like, you won't be missing out on a whole lot. But, show some love to ultimately a very talented rapper, very talented musical artist, and I've heard also a pretty great guy. So, Drake, You'll get him next time, Tiger. All right. So we're now I should also mention that the one of the issues with the music section of Coby's brain is I'm someone who definitely needs some time to digest when it comes to music. You know, I look at music like a well done piece of meat. You know, it doesn't immediately digest for me. So, definitely be on the lookout for more music reviews in the coming weeks because there's some fire that has been released recently, and I definitely what?
What was released?
Oh, for example, thanks for the reminder from my producer. Shout out Amanda Levinson, great producer, even better girlfriend. Nav just put out a new album. My boy Levin Kali put out a new album. Those are being digested as we speak. So keep an eye out for some good fire coming to the music blog very soon. All right, so we're now transitioning to the thought blog. So there's been a lot of things on my mind lately, as is generally the case. But the thought blog touches on some of the more interesting topics crossing my mind. And so the first of these that we're going to talk about is tip of the tongue. So anyone who took their intro to psychology classes in college probably knows about this. And I just had a few realizations about it because it happened to me recently. So I was thinking about, psychology. Basically, I was watching Too Hot to Handle, and I was convinced that Corey was placed. I'm not totally sure. I have no idea. But I was somewhat convinced that Corey was only brought into the show by producers to tempt Francesca. That was my theory, because his behavior was absolutely outlandish. You know what I mean? Like, that dude was frankly kind of whack. And I was like, okay, I find it very hard to believe that someone would authentically, go after a woman who was so clearly taken. The Netflix must have just brought him on there to stir the pot a little bit. So that would make him, within psychological terms, what? Like someone who goes into an experiment with not acting authentically, but acting in a way that is coerced by the experimenters. I now know that word is confederate. So that's good news that I finally figured that out. So that brings that. But it was like a 2-day period of time that I was trying to figure out what that word was. I was like, Jesus, what is it? What is it? Banging my head against the wall, trying to figure it out, losing my damn mind, and figured out eventually the word was confederate, but was only able to do that, unfortunately, because I looked it up on Google. I know. Very sad. But there was a big part of me that was trying to avoid doing that because it's actually very beneficial for your brain to attempt to figure out words that are on the tip of your tongue themselves and other pieces of information that aren't like readily accessible. It's like flexing the muscle in your brain. It's too easy to just like look things up now that it's almost like we don't need to be using our brains now. And I just hope that in future situations when I'm trying to think of something, I'll still be able to access that. Because I knew it was there, but I couldn't get to it, and that was kind of a bummer. So hopefully I'm going to avoid looking things up in the future and just arrive at them myself. But then that also begs the question of like, in 2020, do we even need to have that amount of access to our brains when we can just look them up? Look these things up. Like, does it even matter? And that's a pretty interesting question. Does it even matter that we are making the cognitive effort to access these words? It's an interesting debate. So please, let me know what you think. Should we just look up the things that we're trying to figure out, or should we, it's so easily accessible with the help of technology. Why don't we just let technology feed us all this information? So it's just it's an interesting debate. Definitely one that I'm going to continue thinking of. But, if possible, I would like to try to use my brain still, if possible. It just seems like the healthier thing to do for your brain. So thank you. Yes, according to my mom, your brain will rot if you don't search for words. If you are correct, then my brain is rotting. But I just so if we're gonna, so that's one theory, right? Your brain will rot if you don't search for words, right? Like that's a really interesting theory, but it's kind of like, all right, yeah, like that. So that's the logic. That's like the first argument against looking things up. But do we so what if our brains rot? We still have access to that information via technology. What advantage is there to our brain not rotting? Or to our brain exactly. We still have access to that information, but obviously you don't want your brain to rot. Eventually, if it continues to rot, you won't have access to other information that you might need. But the word Confederate, I don't know. Maybe that's just a part of my brain that can go. Anyways, interesting food for thought. All right. The last topic for today's show. Adrenaline addiction. So how many of you guys have heard the term adrenaline junkie? So I was thinking about that word the other day, and the thought came to my mind. I was like, all right, can someone be legitimately addicted to adrenaline, like cortisol, the hormone in your brain that is basically the equivalent of adrenaline? Can you become physically dependent on that? Anyone who does a lot of risky behaviors, like this guy who's hanging off a bridge for no reason, why is he doing that? It's probably kind of fun. Yeah, looks kind of exciting, but at some point, is he chasing some dragon? Is he sad when he's not hanging off some bridge? And I did some research, and it turns out that yes, people can become addicted to adrenaline. It's not like a fully recognized psychological disorder, but it's something that's basically there's this idea. It's known as an experiment done by some guy named Zuckerman. So Zuckerman's sensation-seeking scale. It's basically measures how how in need of stimulation one is, and how people feel like if they don't get all the stimulation that they need, they're gonna feel some kind of void. Void is another topic we talk a lot about in the Thought blog. So, if you want to see your own predisposition towards or away from adrenaline addiction, you can also take a test online. All you have to do is Google Zuckerman's sensation-seeking scale, and you can take a test to determine how sensation-seeking you are. And if you are in fact sensation seeking, that also will predispose you to addiction of all kinds, because your brain doesn't feel satisfied, satiated without a lot of stimulation. So I would definitely recommend taking Zuckerman's sensation seeking scale to determine how dependent your brain is on adrenaline. It can be problematic. Like if you're this guy right here, like you're probably better off not doing that. You're probably better off not hanging off a bridge. It's not like an addiction. It becomes really problematic when you're engaging in behaviors that could harm yourself or others. So, if you find out via Zuckerman's sensation-seeking scale that you do have an addiction to sensation, there are ways to fill that void safely. So that's the last thing we got. I think we. Oh, what? Oh, one more slide. So for more, my producer created this final slide. Follow me at the following links. Okay. CobyPolyvautical.com is the way that you can access the entirety of Coby's brain from however many years. And be sure to follow me on Twitch. This show will stream 4 o'clock every Sunday. So get excited for that. Coby's brain will be revealed to you day by day. Thank you very much.